If you really do want to be the change you want to see in the world, these are some of the things that you can do to help these entrepreneurs to get ahead.
I needed you when my kids were younger, right? Because I needed you to give them some coaching about this stuff. How do you coach a younger person? Give me the pitch. What would you say to a younger person?
I talk to people who have the money, who can invest, and they say to me, oh, me? No, I can't invest because I don't have enough money, or I don't have the background. I wasn't invited. I don't have a finance degree. But that's just simply not true anymore. Knowing that this is out there, that there are so many entrepreneurial things happening around you, that you can be involved in it for as little as $100. Just that ability to know that maybe if I invested in something now, somebody who's 20, 25 years old, they have a long time horizon. So it's actually better for people to invest earlier. In the past, you needed to have a lot of money. So that meant that you had to wait until your later years, in a lot of cases, in order to do that. Nowadays, you can get started earlier and you can learn a lot along the way so that once they have more wealth in order to invest, then they can do it in a bigger way.
Welcome to Open Book. I am your host, Anthony Scaramucci. Joining us today is Marcia Dawood. She's the chair on the SEC Small Business Capital Formation Committee, but she's also an author, a podcast host, and a speaker. By the way, I listened to your TEDx talk. We're going to talk about that as well. I thought that was a brilliant speech, Marcia. So thank you for joining us. But before I get to you, I got to give out the title. The title of the book is Do Good While Doing Well, Invest for Change, Reap Financial Rewards, and Increase Your Happiness. What a great book, by the way. We both enjoyed it, Holly, my producer, and I. So congratulations on this incredibly empowering book. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Before we get to the book, though, let's have a little bit of your background and how you first got involved in angel investing. Of course, for some reason, every time I invest like an angel, my money goes straight to hell. But we'll talk about that on another podcast. You seem to have done very well as an angel investor. So tell me how you got there.
Yeah, so I was working in corporate America and I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time, and somebody invited me to an angel investing meeting. And I remember thinking, cool, what is that? No idea. I thought maybe we would be picking stocks that night. I had no idea. Anyway, I go to the meeting and I see these entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs, who are talking about these incredible innovations that they're working on. And I'm thinking to myself, where have I been? I think I've been living under a rock. I have no idea that these innovations are going on right in my own backyard in Pittsburgh, of all places. I'm thinking, this only happens in New York or San Francisco or things like that. Well, I come to find out that there are innovations happening with amazing entrepreneurs all over, in every city, in every country, in every town, everywhere. And I was just so incredibly fascinated because I was living in corporate America and I was kind of doing the same thing and expecting different results, and I wasn't really getting them. And then I discovered angel investing and discovered entrepreneurship. And I thought, wow, if you really do want to be the change you want to see in the world, these are some of the things that you can do to help these entrepreneurs to get ahead.
Okay, but it comes from something, because there's, you could have been, I'm just telling you, you could have been an unbelievable teacher. There's something else going on. So tell me a little bit more about your background. It's one thing to be a good investor and a great networker, but you're didactic, you're a teacher. I feel like I left your book and I left your TED Talk inspired, and I felt like there were things I needed to be thinking about that I didn't think about prior to reading your book or listening to you speak. So where's that coming from?
Well, between 2010 and 2020, because of my husband's job, he works in finance, we ended up living in Pittsburgh, New York, San Francisco, Dallas, and Charlotte, North Carolina. Those are 5 very different places, although they're both, they're all pretty big cities. But I ended up learning so much about entrepreneurship, about the fact that underrepresented founders like women and people of color really don't get very much funding. And when I say not much, like practically nothing. So I just thought to myself, how can we change this? How can we do something to be able to make this different? And I had this perspective of living in these different places that most people didn't have. And I thought, well, okay, I unfortunately am not, a lottery winner, a billionaire. So I can't be writing check after check after check. And I even talk in the book about how, you need to have like buckets of money and you want to, diversify your portfolio, all those good things. But I really wanted to make sure that I could use the knowledge to maybe help other people do it. And could I amplify the message? Could I multiply my effect by helping others to learn that they could make an effect and they would have make a difference too. So that's really where all of this has come from, the podcast and then the TEDx talk and then the book.
Okay. The TEDx talk. I have a little bit of TEDx envy, if you don't mind me saying so. Okay, I've never given one. I'm fascinated by it because you got to get a lot of information into a very short period of time. So give me some TEDx talk preparatory tips and tell me what you were thinking about. And we'll make sure that the link to your TEDx talk goes out with all of our social media when we promote your book, which I thought was great. Okay, tell me how we get prepared for this, Marcia. What do we do?
Yeah. So I ended up writing the speech and I refined it so many times because I made pretty much anybody I knew, neighbors, friends on video, whatever. I'm like, you have to listen to this and tell me what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, all those types of things. So writing it is one thing. The thing that makes a TEDx talk a little bit different than other speeches, and I've given lots of keynote speeches and things like that, but you really have like one shot. This TEDx talk is like you're standing there, you're being recorded, you're live. And in a lot of cases, the TEDx people aren't necessarily going to be like, oh yeah, oops, she kind of messed up that one word. Let's edit that. Or wait, she forgot her train of thought. No, you have to be like on. You have to really know what you're talking about. Make sure you don't miss anything. So I found it, really exhilarating and rather terrifying all at the same time. But really the idea of getting, like you say, everything in those, in my case, 11 minutes to get across a message to say, hey, this is something that I really hope you'll walk away with feeling inspired by. And maybe you'll actually even take action because I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to do that.
I think it's brilliant. You bring up the concept of charity and sort of rethinking charity. And basically, I agree with you, actually. You're basically saying that charity is a way to make a difference, but it may not necessarily even be the primary way. You can be a great investor. You can create social good through your business and hiring great employees and creating a great culture. Take us through that mindset and take us through that I'll describe it as counterintuitive because most people don't think that way, but you've opened my mind to it.
Yeah. So in the TEDx talk, I actually say that, $475 billion on average are donated to charities per year here in the US. And that's a lot of money. I mean, 475 billion, lots of money. However, that is equivalent to, depending on the day, about 1% of the US stock market. So think about that. That's a very, very small amount of money to ask all of these charities to basically, save the world? Like cure cancer, cure heart disease, all of these things that make the climate a better place, all of these things that we're asking charities to do, but they are so incredibly underfunded. And if we really start to look at the amount of money that is going to these charities and the type of burden of the things that we're asking them to do with such a little amount of money, it's kind of crazy. And then you look at for-profit companies and they're able to, pay their people what they need to be paid. They're allowed to market. They're allowed to do all these things and they're not necessarily lambasted the way that a charity might be. It kind of doesn't equate. So I started to realize, wow, there's a lot of small companies, small businesses around the world, around the country that are doing things that could really help and kind of be in unison with charities. Imagine if we all started to kind of pool everything together. So I'm certainly not saying people should not donate to charity. I do. Everybody should. But let's just think about the big picture. We want to see change in the world. We want to see real innovation. We cannot put that type of burden on charities that just don't have the resources.
So the SEC, they're making changes. Unfortunately for me, you probably don't want to hear my opinions, but I'm going to share them anyway. I feel like we have hard left regulation from the SEC, and then the Republicans win, then we have hard right. What I love about you, if you don't mind me saying so, is you're not about that. You're about what's right or wrong for the country. So I guess, how do we get there? Is it ever possible? You go to a country like Singapore, they don't care about the politics. They want to do what's right for the consumer, what's right for the end user. I would say the UAE is like that. Can we get there in this country, Marcia, or we're just going to have tribalism in our regulatory process?
Yeah, well, I love serving on this advisory committee for the SEC because we get to talk about things that really matter. And it's a long title. It's the Small Business Capital Formation Advisory Committee. But what I love about it is we represent all of small business. We're talking about everything from like a mom and pop shop to startups to really any type of business in the US that really is creating jobs, which to me is like a super, super important thing. So I love the fact that this committee can get together and really talk about things that are real and that we can start to make a difference with. You know, in a lot of cases, there are, and I don't even know that I knew this before I was on the committee, so I don't know how many people do, but, you know, some things have to go through our Congress in order to make change in laws and things like that. But some things can be actually done at the SEC with the commissioners. And so that's really what we're doing. We're trying to be those boots on the ground, talking to the commissioners, talking to people saying, hey, this is what's happening in the real world. Let's make sure that whatever legislation's being looked at, whatever type of thing is going on in the world, can we actually start to narrow that down and make sure that we are not hurting the little guy, essentially, the small business, the entrepreneur, and make sure that what we are doing is really making, yes, we want to protect the investor. That's more of the left side of this. And yes, we want to have capital formation. That's more of the right side of it. But how can we kind of all come together to make sure that we're really helping the small businesses in the country?
Okay, well said. So give me the message now. You're on the board. Give me the advice that you're giving. Tell me, infuse for me your angel investing experience, your understanding of the regulatory process. How do we make this better and easier for people to get the capital that they need for their great ideas and innovations?
Yeah, that's a good question. So actually the upcoming meetings that we're going to be having over the next few months, we're talking a lot about finders. So finders are really not necessarily allowed right now, though you have to be a broker dealer and there's a lot of rules and we won't get into all that red tape. But a finder is somebody who can help a smaller business or even a startup to be able to find the capital, hence the name finder. But in a lot of cases, they can get either in trouble or, really put themselves in a bad position if they are not registered as a broker dealer. But the amount of red tape they'd have to go through, it's kind of like they're stuck in this middle ground. But the small businesses really need the help. So what we're trying to do is figure out, hey, can we make something like, I don't know, maybe we'd call it like a broker dealer light or, a finder's advantage or something like that so that they can help these startups and these small businesses to be able to get the capital that they need. Because a lot of these entrepreneurs, they do not have the connections. They don't have the network. So it's like, how do we get that to all kind of come together? And they're not allowed to go on social media and talk about it either, because that's also a no-no.
So for listeners who think angel investing is only for the ultra wealthy and just for the insiders, what does it look like in practical terms, like to invest small, do the equity crowdfunding, that sort of thing? How does somebody get started?
Yeah. So, I mean, back in the day, and that wasn't that long ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it really was harder to break in. You needed to be invited. You had to have a lot of money. But in 2016, the SEC changed the rules to allow equity crowdfunding, to your point. Now, anyone, I always preface it with anyone with an internet connection and a bank account can invest as little as $100 in some of these startups. And so what I usually tell people to do, and this is also a fun activity for families, is create a mock portfolio. Just start. You don't even have to invest any money. You could go on to any of these equity crowdfunding platforms, a site like Republic or Start Engine, WeFunder, those are the big three that have most of the market share right now. And you could actually just create a mock portfolio with your family. It's actually really fun. I used to do it with my stepkids. We used to just look at different companies and say, hey, what do you like about this? What don't you like about it? Start some really interesting dinner conversations. But that's one thing that people can do, just reading through what it takes for a company to put what we call a pitch together, or when they're asking for funding and when they're building their company. What does the company look like? What's the problem they're solving? What are the solutions that they're trying to bring to the table? And I think that's a great way for somebody to get started.
Okay. I mean, the theme in your book about financial return and social impact, how should investors structure their approach to achieving that?
Well, There's a lot of ways to diversify your portfolio. And when I say portfolio, I mean like everything that you would invest in, real estate, stocks, all those kind of things. So when you think about angel investing, that would be the alternative asset. That would be that little bucket of money that you think, well, hey, I could go out and do good in the world and I could potentially get a return. Now, the risk is higher for sure. And I go into that a lot in the book about how to diversify that risk. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to do good and do well. And I think that there is a balance for that. It's also going to be cyclical with the economy. If you think about 2020 and 2021, they were heyday of capital formation. There was capital flowing everywhere. And I personally had a ton of exits. I got a lot of money back that I had invested in years prior. But then since 2022 until now, it's been a little dried up. So we're starting to see the M&A activity come back. We're starting to see the liquidity, but liquidity is truly the main key here. If you are investing in an alternative asset like angel investing, you are not able to just turn around and sell that asset like you would if you bought a share of Apple stock. So that's just something to be cognizant of. Don't use your kids' college money if they're 17 years old, things like that.
I needed you when my kids were younger, right? Because I needed you to give them some coaching about this stuff. How do you coach a younger person? Give me the pitch. What would you say to a younger person?
Yeah, I wish I had something like this or knew about this at age, 20, 25. Just being able to learn about this, knowing that this is out there, that there are so many entrepreneurial things happening around you, that you can be involved in it for as little as $100. I mean, these are things that didn't exist when I was 20 or 25, but just that ability to know that I can see that maybe if I invested in something now, what could possibly happen, 10 years, 15 years, somebody who's 20, 25 years old, they have a long time horizon. So it's actually better for people to invest earlier. In a lot of cases, in the past, you needed to have a lot of money. So that meant that you had to wait until your later years, in a lot of cases, in order to do that. Nowadays, you can get started earlier and you can learn a lot along the way so that once they do become, a little more, they have more wealth in order to invest, then they can do it in a bigger way.
Talk about the personal rewards, not just the economic return, but there's some like psychic energy that comes from all this, it's just not just the financial rewards. Can you share a story of something that captures that feeling? I mean, you write about some of it in the book, but just give me a...
Yeah, like one of the things I'm pretty passionate about is investing in women's health. That's one thing that really doesn't get very much funding, very underfunded area. And there's a company in particular, I talk about it in the book, it's called Joylux, and they are a women's health company. And there's so many other things that I've gotten out of being an investor there. And one of them is that I've gotten to know the CEO quite well and learned a lot from her about how to pivot, how to build a company, how to really think about things in a different way. For example, they're a women's health company, and some of the algorithms as they've been trying to market on, various platforms have really hurt them. And, just thinking through like, wow, I had no idea that all of these different things existed. So it's not just the things that you learn, it's the people you meet, the way that you get kind of a first look at what's going on and get to know some of the things that are happening in the world. I was just talking to somebody the other day and who was talking about some pots and pans. And I'm like, oh, I know the founder of that company. I mean, it's just over time, it's just some really cool stuff and really neat people that you meet.
How's angel investing going to be different in the future?
Well, I would love to see the private markets democratized more. And when I say that, I mean that there would be a secondary market. So imagine, like, if you think back to even the 80s or the 90s, buying a public stock was extremely laborious. I mean, you had to have a broker and you had to have an account and then you had somebody on the trading floor. There's a lot going on, right? Now we can go into E-Trade, Robinhood, and we can do trades in seconds. And if we want to reverse the trade, we can do that in seconds too. It's like amazing. Who would have thought that would have been possible back in the 80s and 90s? So now I think about it and I think, oh my gosh, the public or the private markets are so much bigger than the public markets. There's so many companies out there. Imagine if we could have a secondary market, if we could let this be open to so many people And then we would really start to see the change in the world. I talk to people who have the money, who can invest, and they say to me, oh, I can't, not me? I couldn't, no, I can't invest because I don't have enough money, or I don't have the background. I wasn't invited. I don't have a finance degree. But that's just simply not true anymore. And if we could really start to harness everyone getting involved in the change that they want to see and that innovation they want to see in the world, imagine the type of world we'd live in.
This is another question I've been dying to ask you. You could have like a huge venture capital fund if you want it. So give me the Marcia Dawood life plan, if you will. So tell me what's going on in there, and tell me the different buckets that you get your psychic and economic rewards from.
Yeah, I mean, well, I have a venture fund, Mindshift Capital, with Heather Henyon, who's the founder, and we've done some amazing things. And so, you're right. If that was the path I wanted to take and have it be all about Marcia, sure. But
you're less greedy than me, Marcia. That's what I'm getting at, okay? And I'm enjoying that about you. But go ahead, let me hear this.
Well, I also think about it like, let's just use women-focused funds for a minute. There are so many female GPs that are out there trying to raise funds, and they can only get to 5 million, 10 million, very small dollar amounts compared to like what they really need, which is the hundreds of millions, the billions of dollars. So I feel like, where can I take the knowledge that I have from all of the things that I've done? Because I was one of those people that just decided, like, I don't know how to do this, so I'm just going to do it and try it. Let me be on an investment committee. Let me try diligence with this. Let me run this angel group. Let me start this venture capital fund. Like all of these things, just because I was like, I just want to try to do it. So if I have all this knowledge and I'm just working on Marcia, Inc., to me, that doesn't really fit the bill. And what I really want to see is more people coming together, democratizing this whole private market, so that then we can start to see female founders get funded more, female GPs get the money that they need in order to build the funds, and that we actually start to see the innovations that we want to see in the world. And if that's the part that I can play, if I can write the books and do the podcast and start to get more and more people inspired, then I feel at the end of the day like I did what I wanted.
See, I absolutely love that. And I got that from the book. I got a feeling from you that you're on a mission. This is, it's not charitable the way we would define charity. It is doing good through the process of profitability. And it's almost like, it's a big message about capitalism, Marcia. Okay. And the message that I heard was, you can have a for-profit venture that could lead to positive externalities for people in terms of innovation, quality of life, helping people through employment, but then using your profits for whatever social good that you'd like to deploy them in. Did I get it right? What did I miss?
No, that's it. That was very well said.
Okay. I gotta tell you, I'm looking forward to now following your career. So what's the future look like?
Well, since you asked, when the book came out, Do Good While Doing Well, I talked to a lot of people, especially women, and they would say to me, they still were like, okay, you got me. I'm really interested in this, but you know what? I finally got them to admit to me, I don't really know where all my money is. My husband does a lot of that. I've got a financial advisor. It's kind of all over the place. And I feel like you're asking me to do something that's at like a 501 level. And I'm kind of back here at like 101. So over the last couple months, I wrote a prequel book. It's called Unapologetic Wealth. Rewrite Your Money Story from Any Beginning. It comes out in March, and it is really helping women, especially or really all people, because I had a couple men read it too, and as a beta reader, and they really liked it. It's really trying to get people to think about their money, what they're doing with their money, and how they can align their money with their values in order to create the things that they want in the world and the life that they really love.
It's so well said. So I've got 5 words. You probably haven't listened to my podcast before, but if you had...
I have listened to your podcast, and I was wondering what my 5 words would be.
Okay, good. See, now flattery will get you everywhere with me, Marcia. Okay, I'm loving the fact that I finally found one author to actually listen to the podcast.
I did.
Loving this. Okay, ready?
Ready.
Angel investing.
Angel investing is a vehicle in order to get people to be able to invest in the change that they want to see in the world.
Impact.
I have such a love. You know what? I actually thought, I bet he's going to use the word impact.
You have to. After reading the book, how are you not going to use the word impact?
I know. I have such a love-hate relationship with the word too, because I really do love making an impact, but there are a lot of connotations around the word impact investing and that it is only charitable. And I do not believe that that's true. So I'm kind of out on this mission to say impact does mean profit. You can have impact and you can have profit.
Change.
There are so many things. When I was a little girl, I would think to myself, I want to be the change. And even when I was super young, I didn't really know what that meant, but I'd heard that quote from a very early age. And I just thought, I want to be that change. And change can be really anything that you want it to be. And I think if people realized how much they could affect change, it would really make a difference in this world.
Reward.
Rewards. In some cases, people think about that only in monetary value, but there are so many rewards, especially in angel investing. I talk a lot about how my husband plays a lot of golf and he meets all these amazing people. And I thought to myself, well, where's my golf course? And that's where I found it in angel investing.
I love that, by the way. And by the way, I'd rather be working type. I hate the golf. I can't spend a minute.
I can't stand it myself.
Can't spend a minute on the golf course. Okay. Last word. I'm going to give you the last word. Happiness.
Happiness. Happiness can mean so many things. And I think at the end of the day, if you align yourself, your money with your values, then you will end up being a very happy and content person.
Okay. So I think, and I love everything you said, but when I read your book, happiness is an inside job. That's what I got out of your book. It's not an outside job. It's an inside job. It's making yourself happy and recognizing it's not it's not what the magazine advertising definition of happiness. It's your definition, right? That's what I got from your book.
100%.
Okay. So the title of the book is Do Good While Doing Well, Invest for Change, Reap Financial Rewards, and Increase Your Happiness. Marcia Dowd, thank you so much for joining us on Open Book today.
Thank you.
Francis was not a perfect person. He was not a perfect pope, but gosh, did we need him. And he was an important pope. We have someone in the Francis mold in Leo, I hope. Francis made an example of the first cardinal in history of the church to be tried before a Vatican tribunal. He was convicted of embezzlement and fraud. It was quite a scandal, but I was inspired by that scandal. And many before it. I have spent a lot of time at the Vatican. I love the Vatican. A lot of people don't realize that until the late 19th century, there's no such thing as a place called Italy, okay? It was a collection of duchies and principalities and republics, and then it created a country. But the largest and most important were the papal states. Big hunk of central Italy was controlled by the church and the pope. That's where the church made a lot of money. So when Italy was created, the church lost the papal states, and with it, all of that income.
Welcome to Open Book. I am your host, Anthony Scaramucci, and this is my favorite time of the year. Happy 4th of July to everybody, but it's also my favorite author. I do have to confess this, so other authors out there, please don't be mad at me. But Daniel Silva, who I have read for probably 15 years, one of the greatest American spy novelists ever, and he's a returning guest and a great friend of mine and a friend of this show. And the title of the book is An Inside Job, and it is a great title apropos to what's going on in this book, Daniel. So you are my favorite. It's the best way to start the summer is to read about my favorite protagonist, Gabriel Alon, and you can say whatever you want, Mr. Silva. I know you are Gabriel Alon. I know that's how you think, how you live. But tell me what we're doing this summer. Why do you think readers, because he's older now, he's lost a step, he's got a little bit of a pouchy midsection, which unfortunately I can relate to and empathize with. Why is he still connecting with readers so deeply?
Well, first of all, the guy doesn't have one ounce of fat on his body. He's a slender, slim, incredibly fit.
Okay, let me rephrase. You describe him as a little slower. You describe him as a little slower when he's
You know
in a
what
situation,
I
a little older.
well, let me go back to the beginning. We'll go to the origin story. You know, when I created him, he was never supposed to be a continuing character. Okay, he was supposed to appear in one book and one book only, and he was completely age appropriate for that novel. And he was someone who had done a number of very high profile, important operations for Israeli intelligence, lost his family to a car bombing in Vienna, and left the service and was out, and was just living basically as a recluse and working privately as an art restorer. And that's the character I created. Pretty good character. And my publisher at the time talked me into writing another one. And I have to say I was opposed to it. I did not think it was a good idea. I did not think that someone who was Israeli or even Jewish was going to work as a truly mass market character. I was concerned that there was too much anti-Israeli sentiment in the world, and frankly too much anti-Semitism. And I actually resisted. And my publisher at the time said, "You're wrong, write another one." And I had a book ready to go, and it involved the conduct of the Swiss banks during the Second World War. And actually, Gabriel was a perfect fit for it. I plugged him in there. That book did better. And then I wrote my third book, which was a Vatican thriller. It seems crazy to think it now, but when I first conceived the novel, Gabriel was not supposed to be in it. I turned it into a Gabriel Lawn book. And at that point, I realized that I had a series. And until recently, I let this series progress basically in sync with the real calendar. Okay, maybe it's slightly off. And so, yeah, he is older now.
I love him.
And I've changed the stories as a result. You know, I don't want to pretend that he's still, 40 or 45 years old and doing these things. Although he's still a dangerous guy, and you wouldn't want to mess with him. But also it's just it's frankly the way he is now was the way I always wanted him to be, and I was pressed and pressured and advised and counseled to make him a very violent, tough guy. The whole tough guy thing was really working at that time. And a part of me regrets that, because this is who he really is.
Yeah, so let's describe him.
He is multilingual. His grandfather was one of the great German expressionist paintings. His mother was a very prominent painter. So he, as I write of him in this book, he's born with a paintbrush in his hand. He was born in Israel, but his first language is German. So he speaks German, Hebrew, Italian, French, and he speaks perfect English. So he's an incredibly brilliant guy. He, as I point out in this novel as well, he never finished he has no formal education because his education was interrupted by war and terror. But he's a very erudite, amazing individual with a unique skill set. And I have tailored the stories now to fit a character like that. He's more Robert Langdon and a little less, Jason Bourne and Jack Reacher.
Yeah, but I love it. Listen, first of all, I learn something every summer. I've learned about the Vatican, my church. I'm obviously, as you and I both talked about, I'm a practicing Catholic. I've learned about your prediction skills. I do know you're a little bit of a mystic. You're able to see into the future and portend some of the things that are going to happen to us, whether they're acts of terrorism or strategic alliances that are happening in the world, wars that are about to take place. Let's go to the novel. It kicks off in Venice.
Yep.
We're with Gabriel. He's restoring an altarpiece. Why that city? The Titian altarpiece, I should say. Why that city? Why that painting? What drew you to the story there?
Well, Gabriel has Venice is where we sort of met Gabriel. That's where he was living early on in the series. It's where he trained as an art restorer. It's where he served his apprenticeship. He is, by popular acclaim, by universal acclaim, he is the greatest restorer of Italian Renaissance paintings in the world. So he lives in Venice. He and his wife run the most prominent restoration firm in Venice. They are taking care of all those Catholic churches there and all the art inside them, and they are doing big restoration projects of all the churches and buildings and art in Venice. So they're a very prominent couple in Venice. So we meet him in this novel. He's working on one of the Titians in the Basilica di Santa Maria della Salute. That's that gorgeous basilica that you see it stands right near the mouth of the Grand Canal on the Dosadoro side of the canal. One of the stunning landmarks of Venice. And during his mid-morning coffee break one day, he goes out to the end of the point there, and he's looking across the water towards Maggiore, and he thinks he sees something out there. And he asks a water taxi driver to take him out there, and what he discovers is a badly decomposed body of a young woman. And we're off to the races. And the Italian police ask for his help in the investigation. Not to be too graphic here, but the corpse is badly decomposed, and they need to produce a forensic sketch. And we see a new skill set that Gabriel has, his ability to produce a forensic sketch, which is something that's just always fascinated me, trying to either turn a skull or badly decomposed human remains into something that we can use to help identify a decedent. And we see that he's able to do this, and one thing leads to another. And he's on the trail of a long lost painting by Leonardo da Vinci.
All right, it's summer, and let's be honest, there's nothing worse than tossing and turning in a hot room, sweating through the sheets like you're on a bad cable news hit. I've had those nights, and they can be miserable, which is why Cozy Earth's bamboo viscose sheets are a game changer. These sheets are temperature regulating, incredibly breathable, and they help you sleep several degrees cooler. I'm telling you, the first night I slept like a baby. No heat, no humidity, just cool comfort. Cozy Earth even gives you a 100-night sleep trial. So try it during the hottest stretch of the year. If you're not in love, send it back. But trust me, you won't. Upgrade your summer. Go to CozyEarth.com and use code OPENBOOK for 40% off best-selling temperature-regulating sheets, apparel, and more. Trust me, you'll feel the difference the very first night. Sleep cooler, lounge lighter, stay cozy. You think there's one out there? Do you think that there is a long-lost Leonardo somewhere that we have?
This is something that I went into before I even started working on the novel with my contacts and my people inside the art world. And the short answer is, I would say there probably are a handful of paintings that, we do not have complete documentation of that very, very busy studio of his. We don't know every single painting that was made and where every painting went. And so I researched it with my people and people who have worked on Leonardo's before and who are Leonardo experts. There's a difference of opinion out there, but I say that there's a distinct possibility that there are a handful of Leonardo oils still to be found. So what is a Leonardo, though? Okay, that's the next question you have to ask yourself. Is a painting that's a product of his studio that other assistants worked on, and maybe he put some finishing touches on that. Is that a Leonardo? I say it is. There's a painting that he might have supervised. I say it is. And so what I did is I turned one of my favorite Leonardo sketches, one of my very favorite Leonardo sketches. It's regarded as one of the greatest sketches ever made by art historians. It's a sketch that called Head of a Young Woman is what we call it now, but it was a preparatory sketch that he made. It's one of the most beautiful sketches ever made. And he used this unknown, probably Milanese young girl as the prototype, as the model for the Archangel Gabriel in a painting called Virgin of the Rocks. I always thought, my goodness, he should have painted her the way he drew that sketch. Look how few strokes of his silver point pen he used to make that. Look at the penetration of character. Look at that, the perfection of that image. I just one of my favorite paintings of all time.
So, the Salvador Mundi.
Yep.
Which, just a reminder.
Here we go. We're going to get into some trouble.
Yeah,
here.
let's have this conversation because it is tied in because this makes the book so fascinating because you're on the trail of the past. But what makes the book so fascinating, you're on the trail of the past to apex geniuses. Da Vinci, to me, is an apex genius. Isaac Newton is an apex genius. And there are some people in the Western world over the 5,000 years of our recorded history that would literally realm in any time. They would be the leaders of their time. And so that's what makes it so fascinating. You're on this trail. So let's talk about the Salvador Mundi for a second. For those people listening in that may not know it, the Salvador Mundi was discovered in Louisiana. It was brought to a few restorers, and some of them drew the conclusion that it was a Da Vinci, and some, I guess, it was a woman.
It was brought. I think it was brought to one. It was
the woman, right? There was a woman restorer.
Diane Modestini, yeah, a very prominent restorer, and so they found the painting. I think they paid $1,100 for it from this auction house in New Orleans, and it, not to go too deep in the weeds, but we know how to restore paintings now. For centuries, though, they were subjected to barbarous restorations, or what I would call them repaintings. This thing was covered with layer upon layer upon layer of overpaint, as we call it. And Diane stripped it, as we say. She took all that stuff off, all the dirty varnish and all of the overpaint, and she says, "Oh my goodness."
You moved the thumb, right? What made her think that it wasn't?
Well, there were two thumbs on the blessing hand, as we call it, and there were, which suggests that if you look at, if you were to be able to look on one of my favorite paintings, the Deposition of Christ by Caravaggio at the Vatican. I don't know if you've been to the Vatican museums. Under Jesus's the hand that we see, I think there are about 4 or 5 other hands down there where Caravaggio keeps moving it around. And so pentimenti like that is suggestive of an original work, not a copy. If you're just copying something, you're not going to be making changes like that. And so that thumb is, is suggestive of.
I have hedge fund managers that were thinking about bidding on it, and they were worried that it wasn't real. They didn't say that it wasn't real. They just were worried that it wasn't. Sure. It wasn't conclusive to them. Was it conclusive to you? Is the Salvador Mundi real? I'm
going to leave that to people who know a lot more about it than I do.
Okay.
I have. I've come to the conclusion that it is at a bare minimum a studio work that came out of Leonardo's studio. I know someone who was involved in that whole process, who was looking at that thing under microscopes and everything else, and it is convinced that he can see the brushwork of Leonardo in there. I'm not going to. I'll leave that to people who. I'm not an.
I find it fascinating because he's. I find it fascinating.
There were some issues with it, though. There were some issues with it.
What makes your book so great, and I think it's important for me to tell people why you are my favorite spy novelist, and what makes your book so great is you're not just a spy novelist. You're an art historian. You're a travelogue. You're a Baedeker's, frankly. I feel like I know restaurants that you've been to. I know places in Cornwall. I know places in Venice. I know restaurants in Washington, some of which you've blown up, that I have frequented. But I want to go to the Vatican for a second.
Sure.
So, because I'm trying to talk to you in a way, Daniel, where I'm not trying to give away too much of the plot. I want to talk about our guy. He's super tough. He's very charismatic. He's good looking. He's got a young wife. He's had tragedy in his life. He's a Renaissance man.
Definitely.
He knows his wine. He knows his art. But he also knows how to beat the daylights out of somebody and be an assassin if necessary. But you pick things for a reason. So story set in Venice. You've explained that. We've talked about what we're looking for, which is fascinating because that's part of our world right now. We found one, and obviously the Crown Prince owns it. But why the Vatican? Why put the Vatican in this story? And by the way, once again, Mr. Silva, the Vatican becomes a huge, important part of 2025.
Yes,
because we got a new pope. You picked the Vatican before that happens. Boom, here we are. Why the Vatican?
Well, as the fans of the series know, I mean, there are subsets to the Gabriel books. There's a Russian subset of novels. There are art subset there, but one of the most important subsets of the novels are the Vatican thrillers. And as I said a moment ago, Gabriel first encountered the Vatican in a book called The Confessor. It's one of the best entries in the series. And he formed an incredible friendship with a man named Luigi Donati. At that time, he was the private secretary to the fictitious Pope Paul VII. And now Luigi Donati is the Pope. And so there are a number of the books have been set at the Vatican, and Gabriel has worked as an art restorer for the Vatican. And that's why he's on a first-name basis with everyone at the museum in this novel. He has restored numerous paintings for the Vatican, including the aforementioned Deposition of Christ by Caravaggio. He's as we say at the Vatican, he's a man of trust. He walks through St. Anne Gate into the palace without through the bronze doors without anyone checking. And for me, it's a guilty pleasure because I'm fascinated by the Vatican. I love writing books about the Vatican. I think this one might be my favorite one yet in terms of because there is he is trying to track down this missing and stolen Leonardo, but it's also a story about sort of what was going on inside the Vatican during the papacy of the previous pope, and the war inside the Vatican between Pope Francis, the reformer who wanted to clean up the financial mess, and the old guard who didn't want him doing that sort of thing.
The Vatican.
Yeah.
And I love my church.
Oh,
and, obviously, there's an expression in Italian, which I'll translate.
So do I, by the way. So do I.
Once a Catholic, always a Catholic. Now, has my church has its problems? Have there been scandals? There's been, obviously, the sex issues, which is hurt the church, in many ways weakened the church. But there's also been some corruption inside the Vatican. And so the corruption that you're detailing, and again, I don't want to go into it, I don't want to ruin the plot, but the corruption that you're detailing in the Vatican, how much of it is rooted in actual events?
In my story,
In the inside.
It is, as I say in the author's note. It's not quite a roman à clef, but it was inspired by the scandal involving Cardinal Becciu, who was he was the sostituto, so he's the third most powerful prelate in the Roman Catholic Church for a time. And he got involved in a massive financial scandal involving this terrible investment in a commercial office building in London. And Francis made an example of him, and he's the first cardinal in history of the church to be tried before a Vatican tribunal. He was convicted of embezzlement and fraud, and it was quite a scandal. And so I used that, sort of drew from that and mixed it in with my art caper. But I was inspired by that scandal. And many before it must be said. That was just the most recent one. And I think that much of the Vatican's woes when it comes to the financial scandals in the Vatican Bank all go back to Pope Paul's decision to hire and ask his friend Michele Sindona to be the Vatican's financial advisor. That's not the guy you wanted to be. You know who he is, and
of course.
His record here in the United States, and that's to me that's where it all stems from.
Those that are anti-Catholic and those that are it hurt the church. Let's go to a fascinating detail in this book.
Okay.
And this is about Mussolini's 1929 payment to the church.
Yeah, sure.
Why was that piece of history important to you and important to the story?
Well, we have to go back further, okay? So, unlike you and I, a lot of people don't realize that until the late 19th century, there's no such thing as a place called Italy, okay? It was a collection of the duchies and principalities and republics, and then we created a country. But one of the largest and most important little independent statelets in the Italian peninsula were the Papal States. Big hunk of central Italy was controlled by the church and the Pope, and that land and those estates produced a lot of income for the church. Okay, that's just like someone who owns a big chunk of land in England. Okay, the rents and the everything. That's where the church made a lot of money. So when Italy was created, but through war and conquest, the church lost the Papal States, and with it all of that income, and from the 19th, from the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century, the Vatican did not have a lot of money, so when Mussolini, we had the Lateran Treaty, that is the sort of the origin of the Vatican's modern wealth, was when they got a big cash payout. And they brought in a financial advisor, and the Vatican became, in effect, an international holding company. It bought huge stakes, invested huge stakes, mainly in the Italian economy, had controlling stakes in many of Italy's largest companies. And then as the decades went by, began investing abroad. And so we learned in the last couple of years, exactly how much real estate, for example, the Vatican controls, and it's a great deal of real estate in Europe.
So, I see the Vatican as the church, but it also feels like a global corporation. I mean, in the book,
Well,
feels like
it's multiple things. It is a sovereign country.
Yep.
The Pope is a absolute monarch. We have the Secretary of State is something like the foreign minister and prime minister of the church. So it has embassies around the world. So it has a government like any other little mini. It's a very small state, but it has a government and embassies around the world. And so yes, it's a religion, but it also acts in world events as a nation state.
So again, we have the church.
Yep.
We have arguably one of the most famous artists, and when we think of the word Renaissance man, I mean, you got to think of Da Vinci, Michelangelo, others, but Da Vinci is really the guy. And we have this brilliant former Mossad agent, and you've got murder, corruption, history. It's all blended in here. Love the book. I'm going to tie it up with the 5 words, and you may remember this from other times you've done this with me. My producer and I picked out 5 words, and we'd like you to give us the Rorschach test, a few words about it, a sentence. I'm going to say the word Vatican. What comes to mind? You say what?
I have spent a lot of time at the Vatican. I love the Vatican. I was able to spend several days in close proximity to Pope Benedict when I was working on a book. I love the place. I really revere the place. And I have been all through it and inside the restoration labs and at the museums. So I am utterly fascinated by the place, by the faith, by the history of the church, the good and the bad. And I just love every second that I spend at the Vatican.
Okay. Power. Think about power.
Power.
Say the word power. You say what?
I'm just like I'm liking that word less and less and less, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hear the word corruption. Unfortunately, when I hear the word power,
that's what I
think of. I think of Lord Acton, sir. I think power, corruption.
And I don't know if you we didn't get a chance to discuss the Pope in this novel, Pope Donati, and I don't know if you got a chance to read the sermon that he delivers in Palermo, and that is the set aside everything else. That's the most important moment of the book, and why I'm so pleased. Why I personally was, Francis was not a perfect person. He was not a perfect pope, but gosh, did we need him? And he was an important pope. And we have someone in the Francis mold in Leo, I hope. And when I hear the word power right now, I guess my first thoughts goes to the powerless. That's where I am right now.
It's interesting, and I'm going to bring this up. You could react to it. I think we have an American Pope because the Vatican, and by the way, he's a great guy. And I had the opportunity to meet him when we were restoring St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Lucky you.
And Langone had him in town with Cardinal Dolan, and we spent a lot of money. Us New York Catholics spent a lot of money restoring the cathedral. But he's a great guy, and he's now Leo, the 14th, but we were calling him Father Bob back then.
Father Bob.
And he's a great guy. But I think we have him because the Vatican's hurting. And the Vatican knows that the Catholic dough is in the U.S. We have a poor clergy. If you look at the 2 billion Catholics and you look at where they are around the world, it's an indigent population.
Sure.
And the Vatican has a little bit of a shortfall going. Could be from the sexual scandal payments, other things. And I think Father Bob,
remember the Vatican.
He's going to be a prolific fundraiser for them. Sorry, what were we going to say, Dan?
The Vatican very skillfully siloed itself off from that scandal. It drew a firewall and kept it. The payouts were made at the diocesan level, and that's why we bankrupted so many American dioceses around the world. There were huge payouts, but the Vatican took steps to protect sort of the core holdings of the church, in my opinion.
Yeah, listen, the church is going to, long after we're gone, you and me, my friend, the church is going to be here. The church, the people.
I hope so.
Well, I believe so. Well, anyway, I'm a Catholic, so I believe that. Let's go to the word art. I say the word art, you say what?
Gosh, I'm just one of those people that just gets weak in the knees in front of art. If you could see behind me all of the art books, I'm very lucky that my life revolves around my own writing, great books, great art, and great music. It's just so important. I'm at a loss for words how much art means to me and how important art is, and it should be more than just a fungible asset. It should be more than just an asset class. I know a lot of people put tons of money into art, and they do it for investment reasons. I wish it were all in public display and not locked in the Geneva Freeport.
It's just so interesting. When I hear the word art, I think of eternal. I think this is the expression from human beings, the chip of creativity that's going to outlast all of us.
Well, we see Gabriel, he's standing atop this platform restoring the Titian, and he's actually talking to Titian, and, because he's right in there with Titian's original brushstrokes. Imagine that, putting it on your,
There you go. And there'll be somebody after Gabriel. 2145, 2235. It'll be doing something similar. There's a conversation being threaded over the millennial through our art. What about the word Daniel Silva? When I say the words Daniel Silva,
gosh, as I can start to see the end of my career, and I'm thinking more and more what I'm going to leave behind. Yes, I write spy novels, but I mean, this is not a spy novel by any means. It's a mystery. It's actually sort of a novel, to be honest with you, more than anything else. I guess what I hope people will remember about me is in my books is that they aren't about pure power and about bad guys shooting up the place. That I hope that people will understand my kindness and my humanity as a writer. Okay, yes, I do write popular fiction. Yes, I do write commercial fiction. But there's a message in all my books, and they're much more than that. And I hope that when I'm pause up, as I like to say, that's what I'll be remembered for. My humanity.
I'm gonna channel your wife. I'm gonna say stud author when I think of Daniel
Me?
Silva.
Stud author?
Yeah, you are. I mean, look at you. Look how elegantly dressed you are. Okay, I'm sitting here in a T-shirt that says "Don't make me repeat myself." It's great. And you're sitting there swanking.
I would have gotten dressed for you regardless.
Swank as can be. You're sitting there. You're sitting there. The next time I see you, I'm going to be in a suit. It was that amazing wedding. Okay. The last word. I'm going to give you the last word. Gabriel Allon. I say the two words. Gabriel Allon. You say what?
He did some violent things in defense of his country and his people. But when you think of him in the end, think of him the way he looks after his children. Think of the way he is with his kids. Think of what he is. Everything about Gabriel, it is about restoration, and not just paintings, about situations, about righting past wrongs, about looking after the weakest and most vulnerable in society. He's a decent, kind person. That's who Gabriel Lon is.
Well, listen, I'm counting the days until the next Gabriel Lon novel. You know,
Me too.
One of the great sadness when I finish it, I'm like, another 355 days. I got to wait for another one. But thank you so much for joining us on Open Book. Of course, the title of this book is An Inside Job. It's by Daniel Silva. And it's always a great pleasure to see you, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.